Hello, everybody. Mackenzie here, your marketing manager from Cup of Hemlock. Just wanted to come on here before the video started to give you a quick heads up. We had some technical difficulties with the video component of this Nutcracker ballet review. So this video is going to be a little bit different. We were able to save the audio, and so what we've done is we've actually been able to overlay images from the ballet, as well as some video clips, as well as some fun screenshots from the recording as well. Uh, we apologize if this is not exactly what you were expecting, but we hope you enjoy what we came up with. Thanks. Enjoy the video. Bye. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of a Cup Reviews, brought to you by Cup of Hemlock Theatre. I am your host, marketing manager, holiday elf, Mackenzie, and I am joined today by a fantastic panel, and this is a very special holiday episode. We've already released our Santa Claus scene last week, and this week we are covering the special production of the Nutcracker. From 2017, and it was put on via Broadway HD by the Royal Ballet from good old jolly old England. So, yes, and the production stars Cats star Francesca Hayward as the titular lead role of Clara. So if you're a fan of the movie Cats, this is definitely a piece of work for you. There we go. But yes, that is what we're covering today. And joining me, as I said, we have a fantastic panel. First off, we have Emma. I'm going to do this right. Curson. Yes.
That's right, yeah.
Hello, Emma. How are you? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm well, thanks. I'm just here in the Maritimes right now, hanging out. Happy to be here. I'm a dancer. So this is a nice opportunity. I am more in contemporary dance, but definitely have a lot of Nutcracker in my past. So
have you done a Nutcracker production back in the dance studio days?
Unavoidable. Yes, I have. It was a gigantic part of my dance upbringing from like age 11 to.
Wow, that's fantastic! And what's in your cup today?
Okay, I'm ashamed to admit, but it is water. But my cup's really nice, so
looks very festive.
Little local pottery.
Love it. Reminds me of almost like the end of a snowstorm when like the sun is kind of breaking through post snowstorm.
We do have a giant snowstorm.
Perfect.
Right now, so.
Perfect. Wonderful. Next we have the wonderful Anna Paley. Said that right? Yes.
Yeah. Yes.
Perfect. Awesome. Hello, Anna. How are you?
Hi, I'm well, thank you.
Wonderful. Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself, because you're our next newest panelist.
That's right. I'm here for the first time. Thanks for having me. So I am in Toronto right now, sitting in my home. And usually I would be at the University of Toronto. I'm a fourth-year PhD student at the Center for Drama, Theatre, and Performance Studies. I'm specializing in dance history, so early 20th century. And specifically visual culture surrounding Eastern European traveling dancers. So drawings, paintings, sculptures that were created from their performances.
Wow. Okay.
That's my shtick.
Perfect. So we actually, so you also have a bit of a dance background. Have you ever done a production of the Nutcracker yourself?
I actually have not, but I was born in Ukraine, so I moved here when I was 9. So before that, and after as well, I went to see the Nutcracker and other ballets with my family, a lot, often. Ballet and opera was mandatory.
Yeah, absolutely.
And next we have my wonderful fellow York University alumni, my DT survivalist, like myself, Ms. Haley Pace. Hello, Haley.
Hi, Mac. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining us after your very busy day today.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, so tell us a little bit about yourself. I mean, I'm sure some of our viewers are like, where have I seen her?
Yeah. Well, I graduated from the design and device theater programs at York. Mm-hmm. And then I was like, I don't really want to do theater anymore because it just wasn't enough for me. So for some reason, me and theater didn't get along too well. So I ended up transitioning into film. I ended up being a production designer for film. Designed several projects over the past 4 years. And I've also kept working on my craft as an actor. Since I graduated, since 2016, I appeared on Schitt's Creek, In the Dark, and The Expanse. So those are all pretty notable TV shows I'm extremely proud of.
Yes.
And today I just did my grad school acting audition for NYU Tisch. So
woo!
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. I have to say, I thoroughly enjoyed the surprise of when you popped up on Schitt's Creek because I had totally forgotten. You appeared in that you appeared in that escape room episode, and when the hood came off, I was like, oh, it's Haley.
Yeah, honestly, Eugene and all of them are such a pleasure. I forced myself to sit with them at lunch and just absorb everything I possibly could from them.
Good.
It was crazy and amazing, and I still can't believe it happened.
Well, who knows? Maybe we'll do a separate side convo. We'll film one of those, and we'll get all the inside deets about working on the Canadian classic, Schitt's Creek.
Yes, absolutely amazing.
But all right, and Haley, what is in your cup today?
Oh, it's my favorite beverage, which is lemon water.
Nice.
That's the only thing I've been drinking today.
Good. Oh, and what was in your cup? I don't know if we got to see what was in your cup yet.
That's right. So in my cup here, which is little polka dots, gold polka dots on teal, I have peppermint tea.
Perfectly fitting, like tonight's play. I feel like peppermint tea is a really good fit for this.
For sure.
For me, I am drinking. So I have a bit of a red theme going in honor of the Nutcracker. So I'm even drinking some Diet Cranberry Ginger Ale as well. So I'm red throughout in my lovely tankard mug. My tankard mug. Yes. But all right, why don't we get into this this cracker of a piece? So, first off, we always start with the classic question of which character do we feel was best performed? And this is a big cast. So, Emma, seeing as you have performed in this ballet before, who do you feel best represented their character?
I mean, in terms of being a performer, although I didn't know about the cat's detail, I would go with Clara.
Yes, Francesca Hayward.
I don't know if that warps.
No, I mean, I'll say she was very good dancing in the Nutcracker. Not the best singer, and mostly we can have a debate about the fact that she's a BIPOC performer and they made her into the bleach white cat. That's a whole other different conversation to be had. But she is fantastic, and from all the interviews I've watched with her, she seems like an absolutely lovely individual. So tell us a little bit more about why you thought Francesca Hayward was your standout of the night.
Well, she brought me back to like what it felt like to be in the Nutcracker, when everything is kind of like this magical, wonderful world, and it's this over the top. Like, she was so lovely, it made me sick. Like, it was just so pure and so ballet. But she was doing it flawlessly, and there was only one moment where it just also melted my heart, because it was like the little bit of real shining through that like performed ballet aesthetic that she just did beautifully. Was like the thing we all used to do on stage when we're coming this way and the audience is over there, and we're like, so how are you doing? Like I caught, and they were zoomed in on her, and she like mumbled something to the lady that she was approaching, and I was like, oh, that's great, that's nice, I love that. But other than that, it just felt really in the world of what they were doing, because I don't think that all the characters were really
Agreed
performers, but she
Yes.
held her own.
And agreed. There's a reason why I don't know if it's Clara or the sugar fairy that gets called the prima ballerina of the production. I don't know which one is which, in those terms. But I definitely would say Clara she definitely was a standout. She definitely played that youthful energy that character requires, and she has the great big eyes that really kind of sell.
I genuinely thought that she was a younger age than all of the people playing the adults in the party scene at the beginning. I genuinely thought that she was a younger dancer, and I thought, oh, that's cool. They don't quite get a child like in some versions, but they don't quite get an adult. And then she started dancing. I was like, oh, she is an adult.
She is an adult in this.
Yeah,
wonderful. Anna, how about you? Who did you feel was best performed tonight?
Can I do a few, like maybe two best performers?
Yes.
Okay, so I totally agree with Emma and you, Mac, as well. I thought that Francesca Hayward was just like breathtaking, flawless, so nice, and so expressive and emotive. Like what you said about her eyes, totally agree with that. Seems like she really loves what she does. So I really appreciate seeing that. I think like when you can see that through the dancing, that somebody's just like so happy to be at work. That's always really pleasant. And one moment that stood out for me, actually, I was actually a little bit like shocked in a positive way, is I think there was the one moment where she turned towards the audience and she actually cried. I think there was like tears. I was like, really? She cried on command? That's amazing. So that was really kind of I don't know, I got a little chills there. That was really nice. But that said, I think that I would have to give the sort of winning spot overall to the like a main flower from the flower waltz, if you remember. So there's like this main, I don't actually know what the official title of that character is, but it's the flower waltz.
I looked at it was while scrolling the rose.
Yeah. The rose, the flower fairy.
She was called Rose.
Okay,
something.
so her.
Flower
yeah,
fairy,
she was wearing pink, and oh my goodness, I loved just her body language. I thought she was so like effortless in the way that she moved, that she allowed herself to just risk like a lot on the stage. So like I saw her flying across the entire stage in like 3 seconds, and that to me really took the medal home. So,
okay, I got her name. I found it. So the Rose Fairy was played by, I'm gonna butcher this, so I apologize in advance to this performer, but she was played by Yahui Choi. Cho. Yahui Cho.
Yeah.
Was the performer of that particular thing.
Yeah. So wonderful. I loved her.
It's true. And I mean, considering that section of the, I call it the around the world act, like a sequence, the around the world moment where you go from Arabia to Russia to all over the place. But she definitely was one of these standout performers. And that's a section that has a lot of memorable music where like you can remember certain ones, like the Russian dance has always stood out to me because the music is so iconic from that moment that the minute you hear it, you're like, okay, I know exactly where we are. But she definitely had that precision of movement as well that really kind of drove that performance. Yeah, for sure. Haley.
Yes.
Who was your shout out of the night?
Okay, so honestly, this was my first time watching this, and I'm actually not that well versed in the world of ballet, so I actually don't know really much about it, and I just kind of analyzed this from sort of like a different perspective.
Do it.
I didn't really come at it as like a dancer or knowing much about the Nutcracker other than like the basic story of it. So this is the inner designer in me. I'm always watching everything that happens in the background. So I'm not always paying attention to like who's on the front of the stage, just because I've been in the back of the stage as the ensemble so many times. I like to watch what ensemble does.
Yes. And
I like to watch how directors make stage pictures with the entire cast. So I'm honestly watching the ensemble most of the time. And I'm seeing like how they are directed and how they are blocked and how they are brought in and out of the stage. I always find that very, very fascinating because blocking in groups this large is so complicated.
Yes.
And those are like the things that I was just clocking, like, oh, what is this person in the background whispering to this other person? Or like, what are they, are they actually having conversation? Are they just like mouthing like the theater trick words? Like,
cabbage,
I'm always
cabbage.
Yeah, or like vacuum or whatever. Like, I'm just like wondering about all the people like who are BG. So yeah, that's, I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yes. I mean, in the opening party sequence, there were some great character actors filling up the space. Like, there was the old kind of balding butlery character that was always kind of hobbling around in the background.
Yeah.
Every time I saw him, I was like, what is he doing? Like, he's just wonderfully, like, being his little character in the background. Or it's like the old grandmother in the wheelchair doing stuff. Like, there's so many great... This director, Peter Wright, I believe, is who is the director of this. He did a fantastic job of building the rest of the world in those bigger scenes. Because you're right, anytime when you're dealing with a big ensemble, you can tell how good a director is, because not only do they pay attention to what's in the foreground with their leads, but also how well they manage the background. Because you can tell when, especially in, like, not to bash community theater, but a lot of times in community theater, you have the townsfolk all standing along the back, kind of all looking kind of like deer in headlights. So the fact that you have a director who is able to bring all that together and create such a whole world picture where you understood the world that the story was taking place in. So definitely I get what you're coming from.
It's pretty wild. Like, when, even when I'm looking back on it right now, it's like you can see that there are groups of people that are subdivided to have different direction. So like, some people are told to talk to each other, some people are told to pay attention to what's happening in the foreground, and all that is character building. All that is it contributes to the life of the story and makes it more real. So I'm fascinated by that.
Agreed. And my personal shout out for this goes out to Gary Afus, who played Herr Drosselmeyer.
He's amazing. He was so fun.
He was
his cape.
So many magic tricks.
And I have to say, he nailed that cape. Like, that cape looked like such a fun piece of costume work to play with the way he just flipped and twirled it around himself. Like, it was like, how could you not be having a big smile on your face when you get to do all the fun magic tricks of the night and you get to twirl around in a cape? Like, just like, I remember doing that as a child with like my dress up capes that I would wear, getting to swoosh them around. So after you get to be an adult, getting to get dressed up in the most fanciest 3-piece fancy suit with a nice, beautiful, flowing cape behind you. Like, it was gorgeous. And he's the first character you see, and he's one of the last ones you see at the end of the performance. And throughout the entire piece, you're continually being drawn to him and his reactions. Like, he was such a great reactionary actor that allowed the action to take place in the foreground, while he was still able to elicit enough of a reaction that you wanted to see how he was reacting to those key moments of the story. It was like, sometimes when he would leave, it'd be like, oh, where did Uncle Drossel, or I guess this is Herr Drosselmeyer, not Uncle Drosselmeyer, as some of the stories have him be. I'm also really happy they didn't go with the eye patch look. And for some reason, like, Herr Drosselmeyer gets a lot of the time where they determine almost like a bit of a pirate. And it's like, why? Why is Herr Drosselmeyer a pirate? Thank God they didn't go with that this time. They made him a nice dandy gentleman who gets to perform some really fun stage magic, which actually sometimes made me go, how are they doing it? Like there was some moments where I had to rewind just to like figure that out. So definitely Gary Afus as Drosselmeyer.
Oh yeah, and a lot of his choreography is pretty scary in the sense where, like, he has to do like sleight of hand stuff on stage, like that metal ball that he did at the very beginning. That is a classic magician's trick, and to be able to be doing magician's tricks while being like attached to strings and all this other stuff, it's so technical. My technical brain is thinking like, how many things could go wrong? Like, you have to be rehearsing that so much. It's so rigorous on top of just the motion and getting to the right places in the stage at the right time. Like, just from a technical perspective, it's absolutely gorgeous.
Shout out to the little boy. I think he threw that too. I'm assuming it's attached to something because it like levitated over to this point. But still, the fact that you catch this metal thing flying at your head and you're like an 8-year-old boy,
very impressive. Very, very impressive indeed. So well done to this entire cast. I mean, this was a very solid cast that earned that standing ovation at the end of the performance, for sure. Now we get into what was our favorite production or design element. And for this, Haley, as this is kind of where you went to school for, so you've probably had experience with these bigger sets. I think also, I remember correctly, you actually worked for the Canadian Ballet, didn't you?
I did.
For a hot second. So
I did.
So I assume you worked on a production of Nutcracker while you were there.
No, it actually wasn't that extensive.
Oh.
It was more of like a collaboration I did with the students there at the National Ballet.
Okay.
Yeah, and I was in charge of designing costumes for them. So that was a brand new designing and building costumes for them. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that was an endeavor that was very new as a costume designer because, putting, paint on spandex is like a very different thing than applying fabric paint to any other kind of material and still having the spandex behave properly while the dancers are dancing. So that was definitely the biggest challenge. And some of these costumes, like looking at them, they're incredibly complex and they have to be well made, very, very well made because they go through a lot. And, they have to be as well fit the period, which is also a very tough thing when you're going for gowns. How are you supposed to have a ballet dancer shooting up a gown? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's complicated. It can be dangerous. So I definitely have experience with this, and I look at how the costumes are made and see, okay, like the PG, everyone has gowns down to their ankles, and then the characters that don't need period gowns, it's always like from the knees up. Yeah. Otherwise, it's a hazard. So it just makes me think about like the construction of the costumes and how far they had to go to make them structurally sound to last a performance like this.
Yeah, the costumes are absolutely stunning. Absolutely, like especially once again the Drosselmeyer costume that he wore with all those layers and that beautiful embroidery work that was done on his jacket and his vest. It was like just once again, it's a feast for the eyes when you're because as we all know, the costumes added a little bit more of that character, building into the work. Like even Clara's white nightgown that she wears says something about her and the ingenueness of her character, that she's in this beautiful white angelic outfit like that's definitely saying something about who she is. So the costumes definitely were a feast for the eyes in many ways.
Yes, and you have to be strong. Going back to that cape he's wearing, it looks like it's made out of velvet and it's double lined as well. So you have to be strong. You have to be fit to wear costumes like that. There were times in my career where I auditioned for roles where I would have to wear full prosthetics and a full armor of costume. And one of the questions that the director asked me was, are you physically fit to wear this for a 12-hour day? And I went, I don't think so. Like if I were to get cast in this role, that means I would have to go to the gym, legit. And work up endurance and work up physicality. So it's just another amen to the physicality of these actors.
Yeah. For sure. Anna, what did you think? What was your favorite production or design element?
I was actually going to bring in Drosselmeyer's cape here, and then you all beat me to it. So that was like... I was like on cue there. No, really, I agree with that element as well. I think that contributed to so much of the weaving together and like cohesion of the narrative as a production element. That I think it was like a through line for me. Like it kept me in the world. It created this metaphoric space of reality versus fantasy. Like I really understood how the figure of Drosselmeyer and specifically his costume and the way he maneuvered it contributed to the storyline. So that was lovely. And I'm just a big fan of velvet. I just love velvet. It just makes me so happy. So, and like embroidered velvet, like, yeah, I'm there. So that was a highlight for me. As far as other elements, I think actually one element I really enjoyed related to costume, of course, is hairstyles. I really appreciated some of the work that went into the things that were on people's heads, kind of imagining, not having ever had to perform ballet, but imagining how also sort of detail oriented it has to be to like stay in place and just be really technically like accurate, so that nothing no accidents happen or like no faux pas or whatever. I appreciated like the hats in the opening sequence on the like guests of the family's house. Yeah. Like that was comical. It incorporated a little bit of humor into this scenario. And then I really appreciated, this is actually kind of just my like former gymnast / little kid coming out, but I love the Sugar Plum Fairy, and I don't know what they called it in this production, but the Prince Coqueluche, I guess is his name in French, like her prince, I guess. Yes. They're like, they had so much sparkle on their heads. Like I really actually thought that was really fun, really fantastical. The fantasy really shone through for me through the hairstyles.
Agreed. Yes, definitely. Wig making and hair work is one of those kind of unsung elements of costume design that people kind of forget when they watch a show, is how much time and energy goes into making those headpieces. I mean, Haley, did you ever study wig making while you were at York? Because I know I know you could if you wanted to, but the amount of time and energy that goes into actually like weaving the hair into that wig to style it and then maintain it, like that is such a investment of time and energy.
I've never ever worked on a wig, but I do know a lot about wigs because I model with wigs, and I've also worked, like I was a personal assistant for a Broadway actress for 4 years, so I've seen her put on a wig, and that was personally made for her, and like it's serious ass business, like like even the way you put it on and everything, it's like it's so intricate. It's a whole session in itself. They're woven by hair by hair. Yeah.
Respect the craft. Respect the craft that goes into to what goes on your head.
Oh yeah. Yes. I respect all them drag queens too.
Yes. Absolutely. Emma, what would your shout out for production and design elements?
Okay. Before I do the things that I love, wigs were a big thing for me. They were my low point. There was a lot of wigs going on. It was the sameness of it and the choices and the often making them all blonde that was just very cringe, very uncomfortable for me. So I didn't know how to handle watching that, and it was like very uncomfortable to watch. Very sparkly, but like very uncomfortable.
Good point.
Like it's very cringe. Legit. Like all blonde doing snow. It's like, okay, do we need to go that far? Like you've already gone pretty far.
Yeah,
we should not be adding to the problems. But then, I do have not a wig story, but just in the dance perspective. Like I was doing, it was a contemporary piece, more actually modern dance, and the choreographer does not like my hair. It's too thin. So in a bun, it was like this big. It was a little knob at the back of my head, and she was like, "This won't do." She was very old and had very strong opinions about the way my bun had to look in this solo piece. And so she's like, "Come on to my house, chickie." And then she like took me to her basement and pulled out of a plastic bag, like a thing of her ponytail this long from her actual
hair.
And she was like, "Okay, put that, add that." So I had no idea how to do this, and it matched my hair perfectly. It was so wild. And so someone else, like who was really good at hair, pinned it in for dear life. So I had this like giant Danish on the back of my head, belonging to like a dance legend. And I was like, if I can't contract now, I will never find it. Like if I can't do it with this legend's hair on my body, I'm never going to be able to call myself a dancer. But the thing that was so outrageous was like, it was at the back of my head, but doing like movements where I go into like a contraction, like lift my head up that would feel a certain way, and I've rehearsed it for so long. The smallest change in the weight in my head would kind of throw me backwards, and then I'd have to contract harder to like not fall over, which was good for my technique. But it just makes me think, like, anytime anyone, and like how much like rock solid shit is in these sparkly wigs that are like concrete. So what must that be doing to their center of gravity? Like, you'd have to rehearse in a wig. No, anyway, huge respect to the dancers for being able to dance. That even the men who have to jump nonstop, like, that's way, like, you don't need that in your life. So I have a huge amount of respect for the dancers for dancing in those wigs. Like, that's, it would throw you off. And those women on those little toes, like, that's something. My favorite production elements, I really liked whenever they would bring the set to be, like, really highlight how much space they have, or would really create intimacy. Like, I really liked the beginning and the end, and like, it really made it so satisfying. I didn't understand what was happening at the beginning. Was the moving picture behind Drosselmeyer? I was like, who is that? What is this video? What's happening? I don't understand this story. And then at the end, it was so fast, so sweet, but because they brought us back to that like intimate little room after seeing this like really, I felt like cold, vast space of Act 2. Like, I thought it just brought something really warm at the end there, and how like tiny and homely his little, I don't know, study workspace is. I don't know where we are, but I guess workspace.
I was gonna say I always thought of it like a toy shop, kind of like Geppetto's workshop, like that type of kind of Eastern European, like little old man in his shop, you know, like slaving away carving the wood that makes the Nutcracker.
Yeah, I loved that. And then I loved moments where they would highlight the heights of when the snow starts to fall, or when, I think it was Act 2, which I did feel was quite cold, and like it just stays kind of in Act 2, but they really highlighted the top of the top of the theater, I think, with some little details, and I really loved that, because you're like really kind of blown away suddenly. Or when it starts to snow, you're like, it goes all the way up there, and everything just becomes so much more exciting. So yeah, I thought they played it
well said. Well said. I'm going to piggyback off you because mine ties into that, where I love the set. The set design for this ballet was incredible. Like, the amount of detail that went into those beautiful set design was fantastic, and the fact that that set has to stand up to close up work. So it's one thing where, like, for example, at Stratford, when I remember watching Importance of Being Earnest that they did, they revealed in a backstage tour that a lot of their set was made from plastic spoons, styrofoam cups, like repainted, reworked to create that beautiful Victorian era set. But from the audience, you would never know that that's what, like, those were the elements that were used to create that set. Here, on the other hand, you got to make it look, you can't get away with a painted plastic spoon. You got to go in for that fine, refined detail, because it's got to hold up to that visual scrutiny. So the fact that the designer of the set did such a great job of building that world and creating each world, making it so individual, that, like, the house was so unique to the Sugar Plum Fairy Court. There was nothing where it was like, oh, you really just changed some lighting and a staircase. No, like, the whole world was recreated every time they moved. And sometimes, as you said, Emma, like, sometimes it was the big court set, or sometimes it was that beautiful, intimate toy shop set of Drosselmeyers. Like, the way you just move through the story with these sets, and that beautiful scenic painting of the city that you ever so briefly get a few scenes of, and that's at the front of the stage, was gorgeous. The amount of work that went into that painting, or maybe screen printing they did of it. I'm not sure what I'm sure back in the original ballet that would have been a hand painted scenic drop, but now I'm sure they can screen print that on some fabric. Either way, it was gorgeous. It was gorgeous, and the fact that this was a set that actually incorporated levels into the set as well, so you could go upstairs, you could go up into the back. Like, you guys had so much. You even had the proscenium being used for, like, those angel things that show up throughout the piece. Like, there's just so much of that going on, and the fact that the director was able to use so much of the space because the set was so open and allowed for that space to be used while still keeping the dance floor very open. So it wasn't like it was a cluttered set of we got this, that, like we got chairs, we got this and that are clogging up the space. Like a lot of the set was U-shaped. Like it was a lot of periphery set built, but still that periphery was so well built up. You understood the space that you were dancing in, and the way the director used the entire space was fantastic. So well done. Well done.
Yeah, this is about like borrowing what has worked for thousands of years with the Baroque era style of theater, where in the 19th century, you had giant, massive, like, pulley systems in the back where people would be man operating these sets that come in and out, into the scene and then shift on a different track and pull in another one. That's all what is happening here. And it's like, what worked. We're still doing it. It's just up a level. Like, I think it's the Sugar Plum courtyard. Is that the one? That's the one, the silver one?
Yes.
Okay, like that looks like a 3D printed set. Like, I don't know how you could get the amount of detail in the background of that set. It doesn't look painted on. It actually looks like it has textured. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it looks 3D printed because there's so much detail in it, even in like the shapes around it. I would not be surprised if Broadway went to that level. Like we're at that level now.
I agree. I mean, Stratford loves to say that I think they have 2 or 3 now 3D printers that they use to help build their sets. So now at that level, that absolutely, if the Royal Ballet can absolutely afford to invest in some 3D printers to help build up their set, that is definitely something that can be used now. But yeah, the detail work that went into that is it just gives you so much appreciation for the craftsmanship that goes into building this ballet. It's not just the beautiful dance or the classic music. There's all these other beautiful elements that make this a feast for the eyes to watch. Now, with any production, there is always an element that we feel lacked or maybe didn't quite hit its mark, even with the best of intentions. Because no production is perfect. There's always ways you can refine your work. So, Anna, you're going to kick us off for this. Well, what do you think was the weakest production element or performance, or what was the weakest part to you of this piece?
Okay. So actually, there were several moments that kind of threw me off. And I'll start with one to refer back to what Emma actually said. I totally catch the drift of what you're saying about the wigs, like all being very homogenous. And it's interesting because I actually conceptualized that not as a wig thing or a costume thing, whereas maybe I should have, but more of a color thing, like a color palette thing. And for me, throughout the entire production, I just actually didn't really enjoy the color palette. I thought that, and that includes like the fact that some of the costume elements were all sort of the same. So for me, just this is as a viewer, not as a professional in production elements. So please, Haley, bring it in, if you want to tell me that I'm missing something. But I had to do with costume and lighting, I think, interacting, and I think some of the lighting I noticed was quite yellow, quite warm yellows, and that reflected off of the set and the costumes, which were also kind of gold, silver, yellowish, beige. And there were certain sort of reasons why that threw me off. For example, because the flower waltz and the dance of the, I think, marzipan it was, and then also the Sugar Plum Fairy and the Prince, they all have very similar color palettes in their costumes, plus lighting, plus the set behind them. And so to me, it kind of created the sepia effect, almost, if maybe that's kind of exaggerating it, but it did create kind of this beige look. And I just don't know that that's, I don't know that that really reflects the fairy tale fantasy aspect of the Nutcracker, or if it were to get included, I think it might have been good to keep it that way intentionally throughout the entire production, because then we have the very bright red jacket of the Nutcracker Prince, we have the blue ribbons in Clara's hair, we have these pops of color. Anyways, I think those sepia moments sort of fell flat for me, and this included also kind of the angels, actually, which the costumes were so exquisitely elaborate, but at the same time the color scheme sort of I think fed into that like sepia effect. And then lastly, I'll say that part of that aesthetic I sort of interpreted as a little bit of like an Elizabethan vibe. I don't know if I just read into that, but to me there seemed like some characters, especially in the chorus, like the group scenes, had this vibe of like British sort of 16th, 17th century theater. And to me that's potentially like just, the Royal Ballet kind of making it appropriate or accessible or I guess relatable to their demographic audience in London, England, maybe. I don't know. But again, if we want to stay sort of not faithful, but if we want to sort of create the full spectacle of the Nutcracker, I think that more color contrast might have been valuable.
Yeah, I'll jump on that actually, because I totally agree with you. Like even just skipping through it, like what I want to do is like get frames from each of like the movie like every second and put it all together and see what it looks like, because even like the blues are kind of, they're not saturated, they're very dull. Like where there was an opportunity to pop with colors, yeah, I totally agree. I don't think that they went the full extra mile, and I think that there was a reason for that. They were trying to capture some kind of distant past, of this thing. I think they were trying to go for something like that because it's so obvious that they made those choices. I'm just trying to get into the designer's head as to why that was the direction they wanted to go to, because even the reds are not true red. They're not like a velvety red or like a crimson red. They're like kind of more on the orangey side, which is kind of odd. But yeah, I agree. There is nothing that really, really sticks out. And I think what makes good design is when you amplify the story with the design elements. Like your design is supposed to tell the story better, right? And so when I feel like you said, the lore of the Nutcracker being completely lost in the color palette, like it just kind of makes me more sad to watch this, what's supposed to be a wonderful spectacle. Yeah, I just find that it is a little bit too tough. I wish that they took a little bit more risks with color, so that maybe at the beginning we were all sepia toned, and then there was one scene that really hit us. Then I would go, okay, like with the color, we get it. Like this is important, right? But nothing really sticks out to me as super duper important when it all looks the same.
Yeah, I wish they'd been intentional with it. Yeah, exactly. Like really a clear separation between reality and fantasy, if that's how they wanted to go. Or just stick to one way, like stick to either lots of color or kind of this minimalistic approach. Yeah, but not all of the above.
Yeah, totally.
Agreed. Emma, where are you standing? What was your weakest production or design or performance element of this ballet?
I mean, I'm on board that it was very cold in the color palette. I completely felt that too, especially Act 2. If I can go beyond just like production design and talk about like the dance. So for me, it was actually the lack of musicality within the choreography itself was really just like hitting me the whole time. So like the music is some of the most like I mean, it's iconic. We all know it. We all know where these like big moments are. Every single note is kind of amazing, and like how many people around the world have their own Nutcrackers that they had to dance still in their bodies? Like it's a nightmare. Let me tell you, having done it your whole life, you're still like you can't go to, well, when we used to go to shopping centers and things like that, and you hear it in stores. It's like it haunts you for life. But I was really amazed at how like what a miss that was. I felt there were so many beautiful moments, and then I thought, I really actually asked, is my audio off? Is it like not in sync with the video? I don't understand what's happening. And then we got to the Sugar Plum Fairy doing just amazing sequence on the diagonal, spinning, PK. And I was like, oh, nope, it's not off. That's pretty musical. It's just not choreographed in the way that I would hope it to be, where it would make more of the music. And I think it really missed it. Like, it kind of floated on top and through the music and kind of relied on, I think, the costumes and the set to do a lot of the bigness that their movement wasn't doing. And it wasn't the dancers.
Well said. I mean, we're going to get more into the choreography itself, because we will be talking about Peter Wright's adaptation of the original ballet. So we're going to dive more into this topic. But I will say, for me, my weakest element was the unevenness of the camera work for this piece, where I don't know what was going on with this, where like sometimes you would linger on a wide shot for too long, and it's like, why are we staying on this shot? Like, it's becoming stale and boring to watch. And then sometimes you would cut to a close-up and miss some of the beautiful footwork and technique that was happening. And then other times, like, the joy of doing a pro shot with a camera, like you get with these opportunities, is you're able to, as an as a director of the film and as a viewer, you're able to direct where you want the viewer to follow the story. Because when you're watching in a theater, the audience is choosing the story they're following, because they can watch wherever they want. If you want to follow your best friend who's playing rat number 5 and their track throughout the show, you can. When you're watching a film that's very clearly shot in a certain way, so you're following a certain group or a certain story, that's your opportunity to really hone in on that. And I felt the camera didn't allow that to happen. There were so many times where, like, in that opening party sequence, I was like, why do we keep cutting away from Clara? Like, this is her story, and yet so many times we're losing Francesca Hayward, and then we're cutting to some other random shots, like the balding old butler. And it's like, love the character, but this isn't his story. Like, your camera should be telling the story. And I'm sure Haley, from working on a film set and doing film production now, and having that experience, like, the camera is very much directing you where the story's going. A shot tells you a lot about what you're supposed to be reacting to. And this camera work was just so uneven and left me perplexed a lot of the time, where I was like, what is going on here? Like, beautiful to watch when I get a good shot, because there are some gorgeous shots in this. But like that moment when you catch Clara crying, or that moment where you're catching her reaction to finding the necklace still around her neck, or those little other character moments you get, the camera can catch that, and it's great. But then it drops the ball on some of the bigger things, like making sure the story is understood and making sure the right focus is being had. Like, it was just uneven, and I just go, that made it a really tough watch sometimes, where I was like, okay, we've stayed in the same shot for the Arabian dance for quite a while now. I'm starting to get really sick of this dance. Let's move on. Like, come on, let's move forward.
Yeah,
let's move forward.
Interesting. I'm very curious about that, because filming staged performances is like an art in itself.
Absolutely,
that is a totally different thing than what a shot list would look like for like a feature film, right? Or even like a music video. Like, they're all very, very different artistic things. So filming for live performance is very difficult, because you have so much to cover, and so you have so many options. So my only explanation that I could possibly gather for something like that was that they wanted to be able to tell the full story, and I think they tried to I don't think the editor was experienced enough, maybe, or maybe it was just that they wanted to get other people's on stage, like other characters' reactions to what was happening, and they thought that maybe that would tell the story better than just focusing on Clara, for example. That's my only, the only thing I can really think about for that.
I mean, I totally get that entirely, and I mean, I don't want to say that I've been spoiled now, having watched so many of these pro shots, like Stratford's pro shots that they do, are sometimes absolutely stunning. Same thing with some of these other pro shots where like we've had some really terrific pro shot moments where it's like, oh wow, like this is really a solid a bit of film work, and this one just didn't quite hit the mark. So beautiful production, just sometimes the camera didn't quite get it all the way I would have liked it to. So yeah,
I'm wondering if there's also like contractual reasons behind that.
Potentially.
Like I feel like it's also it's like a technical thing that like some kind of like exposure clause that they have to fulfill. Like it's because it is odd. And there could be, like that's the only other thing I can really think of for it being kind of more inclusive than it just focusing on the leads. Yeah.
Interesting. Never thought of it like that, but that is an interesting idea to pitch. Interesting.
Yeah, like in the film world, like your close up and like the kind of shots that you get, the kind of coverage you get is very, very specific. Like, if you're, for example, in Schitt's Creek, they had 2 cameramen and they had like a 7-person cast to do coverage on. So it's like, you have one cameraman doing a torso to the head, then you have the second cameraman doing the close up. So all the leads get that coverage, but a character like me, who is a guest star, who just had 1 or 2 lines to say, I didn't get that kind of coverage, right? So it's like depending on the kind of billing that you have, and also the amount of like the importance that you have to the story, you get different kinds of camera coverage for that. So it's like it's a totally weird art.
Indeed.
And I've heard actors be like, "Oh, well, I'm not getting my close up. Like, why?" And the director just goes, "Well, we don't need it." And they're like, "Well, and they're like, "Well, we're not going to put it in the edit anyways." So it's like it's really all about the director and what the editor want to do at the end of the day, whether you get the coverage or not. So I imagine that this had something to do with that.
You're probably right, Haley. You're probably right. All right, so why don't we get into our big question of part 1 here, which is, do we think this production hit its mark, and is it worth the watch? Emma, I see you kind of like leaning forward there with that wonderful grin on your face. So what are your thoughts on this?
It's so hard to answer that. I'm fascinated by what you were saying about maybe the ways of filming it. My mind was like, oh, so this editor knows nothing about movement or dance, because like there's a cannon going like 1, 2, 3, and he stays on this guy. And you're like,
right.
Common sense, you'd go that way or go to the lines. Anyway, so that was my first impression. But was it worth the watch? I mean, it's a hard one. I also grew up watching like every single day. I watched the VHS tape. Kelsey Kirkland and Barishnikov doing the Nutcracker. I watched it like every day for a solid 2 years. Rewound my VHS, played it again. I was 4, but like I did watch that for a solid 2 years of my life. That was a magical production. Like my little tiny production, actually it was quite big actually in the Maritimes, but like growing up, colorful, big spectacle. I mean, you walk around town and people are so sad that it's not on this year. Like locals, like it's such a thing. It can be so spectacular and so big and vibrant for kids. So on the one hand, I'm like, maybe this is a version where you could just like plop a kid down and like get them to spend 2 hours. Is it a production I would watch? No, because the choreography drove me nuts. But there's some amazing dancing. And then, is it a production I would watch now? No, it's hugely problematic. So, no, I would not watch it. Cancel.
Fair. Great dancing for sure. Definitely. Anna, what were your thoughts on this topic?
Yeah, that's a tricky one for me too. I think that like this year is actually quite remarkable in that this Nutcracker sort of filled that, void for me. Not that I go see it every year anymore either, but I think like for what it's worth, like it really reminded me how much I miss watching live ballet and live theater and live opera and live performances of all kinds. So I think just that like sort of overarching general sense of like atmosphere came through for me in the video. And honestly, it came through like a lot of it was the before the performance and after the performance, just seeing the theater space, like seeing the audience and the orchestra. I was like, oh. So yeah, I felt something. I felt that. So maybe that's not actually about the Nutcrackers, but the video sort of helped, like, tied me over, I think, this year, and get me a little bit into that holiday spirit, a little bit. I think that, like, if I had kids, I might sit them down to do that, to watch this production. Sure, I would explain certain things about it to them prior. So I think, like, you know, as a family thing, sure, yeah, okay, cool. But oh man, I don't want to sound mean, but like I've seen more like spectacular versions. I've seen more thought out versions. There's one I saw in actually Miami, Florida one time that was like one really memorable, and like I still think about that one. It was like 2009. So this one didn't exactly end up on the list of top Nutcrackers that I have seen or know about. Yeah, I don't know if I'd watch it again per se.
Well said. And I'm loving these honest opinions. I think this is the first time we're kind of getting the vibe, but maybe this won't be one that gets the big thumbs up of rewatching. Haley, where do you stand?
Well, as somebody who doesn't watch a lot of dance, I'm also, admittedly, it's hard for me to follow story. That's always been a weakness of mine. So if a story isn't well told from the very beginning and I'm not engaged enough, it's very, very hard for me to pay attention. And I lose elements of story very, very easily. Just a flaw of mine. And so, yeah, like, I found this hard to watch because I just couldn't, like, as someone seeing it really for the first time, I couldn't understand what was going on at all without a program in front of me.
Yeah.
Like, I would need to be referring to the synopsis, like, 500 times.
Agreed.
You know? Because it's hard. It's hard putting all the characters together. Like, someone like Emma, who knows this show like the back of her hand, she could do it in her sleep, you know, would she's able to make comparisons between, oh, this character being performed differently in this year, blah blah blah, and making your own relationship to it. I don't have that, so it's I find it, I'm kind of lost most of the time.
Can I chime in? Because like I was lost.
Really?
Also, So just like little background on me, my production, we had no men, so they had to ship in a prince. So we had one male character and like all women, because it was like the 90s in the Maritimes. I won't get into it, but it was like there were no men doing ballet.
Right.
It was a different time. So anyway, that was my childhood experience. We had to like completely change the story to account for that. So then I'm watching this version. I'm like, who's that? Who? What? There's so many men. Who are all these characters? What happened to her really charming age-appropriate love interest from the party scene? Like,
he was.
I was sad about that, like, because I thought that was really sweet. I was like, who's this lovely gentleman who never shows up again? And then then she has a Nutcracker, and then there's a prince, and then like for the sugar plum, and then but she's not the rose fairy. So who are these people? Where'd they come from? What's the story? I thought there were too many characters. They weren't needed.
Yeah, that makes it hard to make the story feel like it emotionally impacts you, right? Like when you can't even figure out who's who, and there's so many characters and they don't have a backstory. Yeah.
And then Clara goes away for a while, and she's like the heart of it, and then she's gone for like the majority of Act 2, and we're watching just really nice, like good ballet dancing from the Sugar Plum Fairy, and then you're like, oh yeah, Clara, okay, she has a necklace, it's good, and then it's like 2 seconds with the Nutcracker at the end. So like tell the story in 10 seconds because we really got carried away with the dancing.
We got carried away with that around the world sequence. that.
Oh yeah, that goes for a while. Yeah. Can I just like chime in super quick and just say that I think so? There are like various interpretations of like Nutcracker, like psychoanalyzing the characters and such. I won't go into that at all. We don't want that at this point. But there's these theories or like people say, I guess, like people write about how Clara is actually supposed to become the sugar plum fairy. Like that's her. But I just want to sort of also concur that I don't think that's made extremely clear in this production. And I think that's why it's so easy to get lost if you're an adult, and especially if you're a kid watching it as well. Like you'll get your attention span will just like be finished, right? Because of casting, I think there are certain productions where Clara in the first act is a little girl, and then in the second act we have the same ballerina performing a more grown-up version of Clara in her little white angelic dress, and then changing into the sugar plum fairy for that solo, and the pas de deux, like the duet, so that you know it's the same person, like she's imagining herself transforming. Anyways, just thought I'd throw that out there because that's also not something that was included in this production.
That makes more sense. I mean, you just describing that plot point, I'm like, that actually made the story a lot stronger than what it was. I mean, for me, I go on the kind of rewatch train where I'm like, production design wise, gorgeous. If you want to watch it for just production design, go for it. By all means. Great sets, great costumes. The dancing, as we said, was beautiful, even if they weren't given the best choreography to work with. Now, that being said, having also come from limited ballet experience, having done a few classes growing up and then going to see a few in my lifetime, watching a ballet at home is really kind of like being in a Zoom meeting where you really got to strain your focus, where you can very easily become distracted with any other piece of technology or something else going on because you're like, oh, well, they're not talking, so I can just kind of let my eye wander somewhere else. And the minute your eye wanders, you're like, oh, crap, I just missed something that could be vitally important to storytelling, but I wouldn't know because it wasn't spoken, it was physically told. So you have to really focus your attention. And with the way the story was told, where once again, like the Arabian dancing is going on for such a long time, where it's like, you get bored and then you get distracted and it's like tough. Like I would say watching this ballet in a theater probably is a much better experience than watching it on film. So I would definitely say the Nutcracker Ballet is worth watching. This particular production, if you can't get your hand on any other version or if your community is not doing a production, I mean, Broadway HD, for the price you pay each month, $7 per month for Broadway HD, you get a lot of great material like this. You can put this on one night. It's only an hour. It's under 2 hours in length, so it's not like it's a 3-hour extravaganza where you got to sit and lumber through. Like it's a very doable time. So, I mean, overall, would I go back and watch this again? No, but mind you, my favorite Tchaikovsky ballet has always been Sleeping Beauty. So this already was kind of a bit of a deficit of the game where it's like, do I go back and watch the Nutcracker a lot? Not particularly, but is this a production that was so awful I'll never watch it again? Not fully. There's enough there that maybe I would consider going back if I had to. I would much rather go watch a live production versus a recorded overall. But yes, there we go. Yes, it's a very mixed bag of a production that I think this is the first time we're really kind of all not fully sold on it. I'm actually really happy about this. This is kind of the first time you've gone to do this after so many episodes. So, yay us. Okay. So now we're going to segue from talking about the production to now talking about the ballet itself and the piece as a whole. So the first question we have is, this production features the combined choreography of Peter Wright and the traditional staging by Lev Ivanov. I think that's proper Russian, the way you say his name. So did Wright's adaptation of Ivanov's original choreography create clear and concise storytelling, or did the two balletic styles and techniques not properly mix? Anna, I'll let you start this one because you are familiar with the story, having been born in the UK and growing up in this. I'm sure where this story was told to you. Was this a piece that kind of worked for you on the mixing of the two technique fronts, or is this kind of like I relied on my own knowledge to get myself through?
Right. Actually, so I think overall, like I followed, but I think it takes a really particular kind of knowledge of a vocabulary to follow, and so I only was able to do so because of like having actually learned about this kind of vocabulary in academic settings. So had I not had that, or were I a child, I guess, or a younger person, I don't know if that would have been the case. And I mean, the Nutcracker isn't necessarily for just someone like me, I guess, right? It's it's supposed to be for families. It's supposed to be for many people. Supposed to be. Is it? That's the debate for sure. But yeah. So I think the choreographies, I think the way that they were integrated together, the like 1892 version, and I think it was like 1916 or something. Around then, choreography. I don't think there was anything like outstanding or like sort of extraordinarily like risky or radical. Like I just think that it was quite straightforward. Like there were these moments of like physical language, for example, when the Nutcracker like describes what had happened to him and Clara, where he falls on the ground. He's kind of acting out or pantomiming his war with the King of Mice. Like all of that is just like sort of conventional balletic language, I guess. So it didn't stand out to me, and also it wasn't avant-garde or experimental either. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess I just don't have that much to say about it. I think it was safe. Like it stuck to what I've seen other Nutcrackers do. Quite traditional. I should mention though, now that I'm really thinking about it, my thoughts are kind of rolling. That so coffee, tea, and chocolate, right? Got to talk about those because those just like are. Oh, it's just a whole hot mess, right, in like historical context. And so I think that there was an attempt made, I'll say that, an attempt was made to sort of update a little bit of the choreography, because in the sort of older, and I think from 1892, we don't have much left. Like there's not much extant choreographic notes. But I think from the early 20th century version, there's a little bit more. And then it like picked up other choreographies along the way, along the 20th century. For example, the tea performance was like riddled with like racist gesticulations, right? It was like there was this I think we call it like a sort of what was it, like chopstick sort of dance, I think it was called. This included also like costuming with the hairstyles and also the outfits and the casting, so layer upon layer. And in this production, I mean, the casting was diverse, I'll say that, and some of the gestures were actually removed. So I'll just like maybe say the one thing, like one thing on that is that I did appreciate that some of it was removed. However, it was all still there. Sort of the music was there, right? That's really hard to do away with. And so I think even though they changed the choreography up a bit, the general sentiment of stereotyping was still present. However, like in conclusion, an attempt was made. So yeah, you can please like let me know what you thought about that part as well. I'd love to hear about it.
Emma, what are your thoughts on this topic? Because you kind of alluded to it a little bit.
I mean, Act 2. Yeah, it's like it's all like you can see when you're watching Act 2. It's just like we can't. This has to stop. We can't be doing this. We can't be watching this. We can't be showing it to other people. It's outrageous. At
2017.
I mean, this was 2017.
Yeah.
That they made this. Yeah. You know, it's been in a conversation for at least that long. Like people have been calling on Act 2 in the Nutcracker. Like, what are you going to do about it? And it's not just costuming in those like, and I mean, I guess some people say like, coffee, tea, call it that, but their credits at the end still say Spanish, Chinese. Yeah. Like they still call it like where they are in the world. Like they're not even trying to change anything. in ways that are really easy and have been done. Like, that can also be changed. So just, I haven't seen a lot of Nutcrackers, but then, you know, I've heard the conversations that I see, and they're like, not great. But then also, when we're not even doing the around the world, and we're just showing, like, the courtiers all have to wear blonde wigs, and, like, Snow all have to wear blonde wigs, and now we're having conversations like, yeah, we can't have people in white tights and shoes that don't match their body tones. Like, just for your uniformity, like, the whole point of snowflakes is they're all different, and you're making them all the same. Like, it's just, I feel like we're so past that, and so it's very, the costuming, like, can Clara have tights that work for her body? Yeah. Like, she's Clara. Like, why is she in, like, bright white tights? Get a grip. So that was hard. Sorry, we're talking about choreography. I got back on costuming because it was rough. Yeah. But it does tie in. Like, it's all of Act 2. It absolutely ties in. But just getting back to, and it's like, I could talk about that for a lot longer. Absolutely. I think it's important to talk about that. But if I could go back to, like, I was thinking about storytelling, and just there was a little bit of a miss. And balletic storytelling is so simple. It's like you're miming. It's not hard. Like, gesture over there, make the appropriate face. Like, great. It's just so surface level. But then there were things like in the fight between the Nutcracker and the Mouse King, I had a hard time. Like, they're just simple storytelling. He's running after the Nutcracker, and like the Mouse King kind of passed his sword to Clara, and I think she was supposed to be like taking it from him, but like it fully, like, to not like hit her, or like, and he was running in a circle as he did it, and they did not do it successfully. It just looked like he handed her his sword and then like went to die, but like it's not supposed to look like he's handing Clara his weapon. It's supposed to look like she's taking it. And so just like big misses like that, where you're like, okay, so if they can't do it while running, don't make them run, because now the storytelling doesn't work. It's like, what is that? So there were things like that that were just such easy. My rehearsal director self was dying a little bit at moments like that. Did no one change that? Did no one give them that note? Yeah. Storytelling. Little suffering. But I did really love when we got to, despite storytelling being nowhere, I did really enjoy when we got to the Sugar Plum Fairy and that whole pas de deux at the end. And I just want to do a little shout out, because I don't think I gave enough credit to her dancing. Like, when they did their pas de deux, and then she has her solo. After they finished, and she had just done all those piqués and those turns on the diagonal and the fouette diagonal, which just unbelievable. I think when they were bowing after that, I think that was the only real smile I saw the whole time. Like, it was so genuine. When she finished, she looked so relieved and so happy. And I was like, well earned. You earned that diagonal. You didn't fall over. I would also be smiling. So I thought that was a little tiny shout out to that. The choreography in her, like, technical dancing was amazing.
Love it. Yes. No, keep going. Yeah.
One more thing. I'm so sorry. Can I add one more? Oh my god. Because it was in that pas de deux, like, it got really exciting, and I got so happy for her, because it started very timid in the two of them in the pas de deux. What was bothering me in this plays back to the musicality. That's what, like, it's one of the most incredible pieces of music. That pas de deux. It's so moving, and it moves, and all you want to do is see movement. Like, we've built up to this the whole time. Movement, sweeping, and every time it would go and like a little static jump on the spot, and then we do it again, and you just want them to move together and like go somewhere. It's the height of this, like, maybe romance, maybe something, maybe some emotion can be sweeping you away, and it would go and it was so static, and I felt that very sad.
Love that.
I felt really antsy as well watching that. I just got so antsy.
Yes.
I learned a lot. Listening to you about that. It's all very interesting.
Haley, what are your thoughts on this subject?
This is very far removed from my area of knowledge, so I don't really have much to contribute, unfortunately. But that's kind of more what I was saying, is that I'm more interested in what a 2020 version of the Nutcracker would look like and how they would cast it. You know, it's like there is a long way we've come since 2017. And I think that a lot of the issues that Emma addressed are super important. And we would be very conscious of those things now.
Can I just say, I hope that because everyone's having to stop, everyone's putting their stuff online, even though calls were for we should not be doing this ever again. We're causing harm. Knock it off. So I wish that all of these places weren't putting their stuff online this year, but they are. And all I can say is I really, really, really hope that every ballet company, from like the smallest scale to the biggest companies, like we saw here, are re-choreographing the Nutcracker this year and are redoing the sets, are redoing those wigs, and come back in 2021 with an appropriate Nutcracker. I don't know how to solve it, but I just know they can't keep doing that. So, like, I really hope companies right now are using this, like, gift of a coincidence of time to change this staple.
Yeah, I agree with that entirely. That's a super
agreed. I mean, for me, I don't know all the history with Ivanov's original choreography or the way Peter Wright adapted this entire, like, I couldn't tell you where one ended and where one started. But what I can say is that I did find the storytelling itself sloppy. Where I know some of the basic plot, like I know about Clara gets the Nutcracker at the Christmas party from her sometimes uncle, sometimes not uncle pirate, Uncle Drosselmeyer. Then she goes to sleep. She wakes up. The Rat Mouse King, whatever, Rodent King shows up. They have a fight. He kind of gets killed off, and then they go off to the Sugar Plum Fairy court. Some dancing happens. She gets a necklace. Wakes up. Oh, goes, the necklace is still there. Was it a dream? Wasn't a dream? Basic plot. Now, could I tell you everything else that was going on? Not a clue. Not a freaking clue. Like, there were so many things where I was like, oh, young love interest. Does he then become the Nutcracker? Like, is that her dream? That, like, no idea. The whole portrait thing at the beginning where it's animated portrait, then somehow the Nutcracker is a son at the end to Uncle Drosselmeyer. I was like, what storytelling is going on here? Like, just like Haley, like, I would be looking at my program being like, give me the plot here. Like, because that's the thing where it's like, if you can't follow the plot, you're now forced to now focus and invest on the choreography and the dance. And if they don't execute that properly, like they clearly didn't, then what are you watching? And that's an issue. So for me, I don't think this was perfectly executed in the sense of mixing the elements and telling a cohesive story. I think there were some great moments where it's like you have some very iconic dances, like Emma's pointed out, like the one that I always remember is the Russian dance sequence, the bum like that's something I've always remembered. Like, that's a piece of music and that's a dance that, like, I watch people do. It's very iconic, like just the way they do the leg kicks and the arm kicks, like that is all very classic, and that's something that's always stuck with me. There was few key moments where, like, a piece of music or a piece of dance would come up and I'd go, okay, that's something that memory wise, I've seen that enough times or heard that enough times where I know kind of what's going on here. But overall, could I tell you all the ins and outs of the story? No. I mean, and the fact that there are some productions, like you said, that Clara is supposed to become the Sugar Plum Fairy makes a heck of a lot more plot sense. And I'm like, well, why didn't we do that? Like, that would have made a heck of a lot more sense. Like, why they skipped that element, no idea. But they did. So yeah, overall, I just think this wasn't the most cohesive, well put together combination and plot of this ballet. And I think that ultimately kind of hindered the experience with this particular piece. Okay. Next up, we have Tchaikovsky's music, which is easily one of the most iconic pieces of dance ballet score in history. And the fact that it is now transcended the ballet, is now being used in so many other films, holiday themed commercials. Like, what is it about Tchaikovsky's score that has made it so popular beyond its original context? Anna, I'll let you start this one, because you may have some historical experience having kind of studied that element of this. So what is it about the score that you think has made it so transcendent?
Why, thank you. Thanks for giving me the table here, because I'm actually not skilled in music. Okay. So I know the music only as like a viewer, sort of a person who's following the story along. And I really wish I did know more of the music, but I did read a little bit about it. So I don't think I have like a conclusive answer to this question. Unfortunately, I think a musicologist would, and I'd love to know their answers. But my sort of hunch, I guess, is the best way I could put it, is that it's also different. Like, I know this sounds a little bit crude, but I just think there's so much variety in the instruments, sort of the tones used. Okay, quick anecdote, for example, about this, the pas de deux we were just discussing with the Sugar Plum Fairy and the Prince. I guess I read that Tchaikovsky wrote it because his sister had passed away, and it was really like emotionally loaded for him. So he wrote it like under the weight of that personal experience. So that's kind of this like historical moment where I think he really felt that. And also I think related to that, what I read was that he was challenged by like a colleague to write a song using just like one octave. Once again, this is me just saying words because I'm not skilled in music, but I guess that's a huge challenge. And so I think, so he took on that challenge and wrote this pas de deux for the Nutcracker. And I think this is one of the most iconic musical pieces of the entire suite. So I think he just sort of like took risks. He used a bunch of instruments I've heard as well that weren't customary at the time, I guess, in Russia. So some like Romanian, some like French, like old instruments. I think the Celesta was one that I've read about. If you know, okay, yeah. So I think just that like kind of risk-taking sort of rebel thing that he did was maybe unusual for the time. I'm not like glorifying Tchaikovsky now, and I shouldn't, because he was also a very problematic man. But like not a great person apparently. But I think he just like took risks, and I think that's clear within the sound. So there's variety in the sound. If there's no variety in the like costume or the set or whatever, the choreography or whatever that's redone, I think if Tchaikovsky's music is kept within this production, then like the variety is there. Like at least there's that, you know, if that makes sense. So I think that's part of it. Yeah, I think that's it. That's all I'll say.
Okay. Emma, what are your thoughts? Why has this score been so transcendent and gone beyond the ballet and it's been used so often in other materials?
Yeah, the why it's used so often, I'm not sure. I have no understanding of anything to do with music, so I'll also give that disclaimer, like the worst. And for me, my understanding or my like relationship with this is so biased. So for me, like this score still lives in my body. Like it's not gonna leave any note. Like it's still so present in my body because of how many times I've had to do the Nutcracker in like every single role. But I think for a lot of people who've either done the Nutcracker or who go watch it, like you go back because it's tradition. So the warm feelings that you get from having a holiday tradition, like the good things you actually like about the holiday, for a lot of people it's going to see that with their family, the cozy theater, like there are all these things that speak holiday, they speak vacation, they speak time off, they speak family, they speak like holidays. And so I think that lives in people's body in the way you see, like in the way that lives in my body. I think it probably lives in a lot of people's body who have made it tradition, because so many people, it's a yearly tradition. And so it just becomes like really, really personal, I think, to a lot of people. How it's gotten so big, I don't know.
Fair.
Maybe that's
fair. Haley?
A question for Haley.
So yeah, I'm not like a professional musician in any stretch of the imagination, but I have worked a lot with musicians in my time as a theater creator. I like made a marching band theater company. That was my thing. So I spent a lot. Yeah, thank
That
you.
was awesome.
I spent a lot of time working with musicians and like understanding music and how it was written for shows. And I just kind of just did a little bit of research on what happened and how this became so iconic. And honestly, it just kind of seemed like a fluke.
Fair, yeah.
Like the reason why it was so popular at the time was because finally something was being made that wasn't religious. It was actually about candy. It was about toys. It was about this little girl. It was about kind of what Emma said, like the holiday spirit. And people were so excited to see something different at the time that I think that's why it gained popularity. But the score itself, it wasn't actually intended to be a ballet. And the manuscript for the music was lost for 50 years. And it was refound by complete chance by a conductor who decided to put it on. And now that manuscript is in a museum in Moscow. So it's like, I think that, it's kind of more what happens when something is lost and then found, and the novelty of that, which sticks. Not to say that the music itself isn't daring or ambitious in some way for what it was at the time. Like Anna was saying, the Celeste was an instrument that was invented kind of at the right time. It was the sound that that the composer was trying to get at the time that wasn't invented yet. He just kept racking his brain. How do I get this sound? How do I get this sound? And coincidentally, the right instrument was invented. So it's like these things happen by a series of coincidences that are planned. And that's how genius is made. We don't plan to make, like Tchaikovsky wasn't sitting there being like, I'm going to make a hit manuscript for a score that's going to last forever. Like, no, like we think the same way about hits, like, The Sound of Music. Like, no one knew they were making a show that was
that's true.
Long. So I think that's part of it. It's part of the Big Bang Theory of art.
And on top of that, I'm pretty sure Tchaikovsky hated the score. He said it wasn't good. He didn't like what he made. So that's pretty hilarious.
Very.
He thought it sucked.
He's his own worst critic, of course. Like all of us.
That's right.
It's haunting him.
Of course he's going to think it's bad. It's his.
I mean, for me, why I think this has kind of transcended the original context is mainly once again, the orchestration. It has that now synonymous holiday sound with the klezmers and the bells and the strings. Like, it has that the minute you hear it, you think Christmas holiday. And that's kind of been a thing that we've kind of created for ourselves by popularizing the score that we've kind of fed into this ever kind of going circle of, we hear it, ergo it becomes holiday, and we feed that down generations. So it's become this never-ending cycle of feeding into the legend and the myth and the music. The other thing that kind of goes with it is a lot of the melodic lines are very short. Like they're very much 30-second, 1 minute melodic lines that you can easily pluck out of the entire ballet score and splice that into a Coca-Cola commercial, and it totally works. And I think because of that universality of that music, where you can easily pluck it out, it fits the time of year, and you can easily kind of remake it into another feature, is really kind of what makes that bit of music transcendent, is that you can easily pull that. It's kind of like when with like the Ode to Joy, another very famous piece of music by Beethoven, where that music has now been used so many other places. Like you had the milk commercial back in the 90s that used that music.
Drink milk, love life, fresh and cold. Make more of your energy. Drink milk, love life. Do all you do. Living with vitality. Drink milk, love life. Drink milk, love life. Drink milk, love life. Drink milk. Drink milk, love life. Drink milk, love life. Drink milk, love life. Drink milk.
The drink milk, love life, drink milk, love life, drink milk, love life, drink milk. Like that, like that was another very iconic melody that you can easily pull out of that bigger piece of music, splice it in somewhere else, like a milk commercial, and it totally works. And you hear it, and it becomes part of the human vocabulary of a moment. And also just the fact that there's no copyright to it. It's a piece of music you don't have to pay copyright for. So when you're looking for something to fill that holiday music fill, you need to play something. It's like, oh, well, we don't have to pay him, so we'll use that. I mean, to be honest, we used an adaptation of the Sugar Plum Fairy music for our opening of our Santa Claus scene we just released last week. Like that was a piece of music we used. And so it's one of those things of like, it fits, it can easily be extracted, you can easily splice a small snippet of a bigger score out of it. So I think that's kind of where that comes from on that front. I mean, the score itself, even if Tchaikovsky doesn't like it, it's become just as iconic as Sleeping Beauty. Like the amount of ways now, because of Disney, that we now can hum the Sleeping Beauty score. Thanks, it's one of these things of Tchaikovsky's music just being this transcendent piece of work that is very easy to pick up and go, got it, okay, I know this music. Like he may not like it, but he's written some very iconic melodic phrases that have lasted the test of time, and I think they'll continue to, because no matter what we do, we're gonna get to the next question. That this is a holiday classic, and people will just continue to grow up with this piece of music. So we're yeah.
Also, it's interesting that you reference the drink milk ad, because that's actually just clever marketing strategies. Like, most of this stuff is injected into products that we consume, you know? So where would we be if we weren't injecting art from the past into products that we consume and that we see on TV? Would it really have been that popular?
Yeah.
Probably not. We probably would have lost it. It would have been lost for another 50 years like it was in the beginning, before they had TVs, before they had advertising, before they had people who study marketing and studying trends and studying like how to get people's attention and do something brand new. It's a whole art in itself.
I mean, think about it. Like, there's not many pieces by Bach that get used in a commercial. Like Vivaldi's Four Seasons score gets used a lot of times on weather channels because it fits that theme. But like, yeah, exactly. but like, it's very selective about what pieces of music have, particularly classical music, has survived the test of time, and that's mainly because some marketing associates liked that piece of music and found a way to bring it back, and us as humans, we picked up on that subconscious theme that goes through, and it kind of sticks with us. So yeah, it is interesting how to think of if the commercials and the films hadn't picked up on the score and continued to use it after its rediscovery, would it still be done today? That is a Elseworld alternative timeline question. That exactly
universe stuff.
Exactly. All right. Well, let's get into the final question of the night, which is: why do we think the Nutcracker has become such an iconic classical piece of ballet and theater? Is there still more to explore, or has this ballet simply become a stale staple of the holiday season? Haley, you can start this one.
Me. I don't know if I'm ready to answer that yet. I mean, I'm very forward thinking in the way where I think that a lot of things should just had its life and should be put to rest. You know, I'm a very, you know, I don't believe in a lot of theater that's going on. I think that theater, like, there is a reason why it should be seen live, and that reason becomes less and less of an imperative nowadays with the advent of television and Netflix and movies and it being accessible. Something like the Nutcracker, like, you're paying like probably hundreds of dollars for a ticket. It's not accessible. It's not a kid's dream to like go see the Nutcracker. Like, they want to play Smash Bros and Pokemon at home on like your Switch. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of forward thinking in that way where I'm like, I'm not going to try to force my kids to see something like this just because it's like, you should have an education. No, I think it's about like what appeals to people and how do you educate based on the new realms in which we're, experiencing art, like in video games, in movies, in streaming television. Those are all art forms as well that are developing, and we're in the golden age of those things. So we're losing the reason to see theater like this, and that's really sad. But sometimes that's the evolution of life. Like we go through phases like this, and some things get lost or they get reinvented. So unless I see ballet and dance being reinvented for a 21st century audience in which it can still survive in a new way, I don't see something like this being carried forward.
Emma, I see you nodding along there. As someone who's performed this and has lived with this piece, what are your thoughts?
Well, that was a very long time ago. Yeah, no, it's a weird relationship that I have to this piece because, like, getting to perform it, I, growing up, hated ballet. Like, it never fit my body. And then getting to do the Nutcracker, I had to technically do ballet. And so I had to kind of, like, tell myself I wasn't really doing ballet. But it allowed me to figure out that I loved performing. And that's how I, like, found that I wanted to be a dancer, but just not through ballet. So I do have a lot of love for it. My hope for the Nutcracker is that it doesn't come back unless it comes back reinvented. From smallest scale to biggest scale. Completely agree with you. We're like, yeah, is it anyone's dream to go spend $200 on a ticket? No, we don't need that anymore. But we also, in another way, I think a lot of people do need or miss that closeness, and like that's going to feel more important now also. So like we can let go of a lot of crap with theater and with dance that we had before if we do it right, but then we could also really like appreciate how amazing those experiences can be and how that communal energy can be unbelievable, and hopefully we can make it better, both in terms of the content and who gets in the door. So yeah, I think the Nutcracker has so much. It could be exciting. It has so much to explore because they should like re-explore the whole show.
Yeah.
And like not come back without a re-explored whole show. So like, cool moment in time. Because like, you gonna do it or not, ballet? Like, I look forward to seeing what you present to us next year. Like, fingers crossed. Not the highest hopes, but like, fingers crossed. It's been a hard year, that's why. Like, hopes like not really a thing anymore, but yeah. Hopes, we can say, because it could be exciting.
Yeah. Absolutely. Anna, what are your thoughts?
There.
Yeah, I also think the Nutcracker could be so exciting, and I think I kind of have a very specific position in relation to it. So, again, I can speak for myself only, but I think there are two reasons I can think of right now for which I would say, like, unequivocally, like, I think we should keep going with the Nutcracker. Like, I will be, like, try to be optimistic here. And that is that the first one would be the story. And I think there's a lot of potential with the story. And I think it's not a potential that's always realized because of the way the Nutcracker has been marketed and positioned in society. Like, I think that's the problem. I think the way that it's cliche and the way that it's marketed, like how popular it is, all those things are actually setting it back in a way. So I think there's lots of opportunity for different Nutcrackers, very different ones. And when I say storyline, I mean, like, listen, so it's a story about a little girl, and she like realizes her dreams. Like, that's really cool, I think, in a way, right? And there's various interpretations of it where it can be about a little girl who sort of actualizes her creative power because she has such a rich imagination that she conjures up all of these fantastical things, so it can sort of attest to the to the creative power of a girl, like cool. And then also it can be in other interpretations, this coming of age story where this little girl becomes a woman, which is the sugar plum fairy. So I think there's like potential there. It's just sometimes visually, it's not translated in fresh and exciting ways, like for 21st century audiences. And so the way that it's positioned can make it a little bit stale, as you word in the question. But I don't think it has to be that way. And then, of course, the other reason why I think like we should try at least is I'll preface it with an article that I've read, which argues for ballet as an ethnic form of dance. I forget the actual. I think the article title is actually seeing ballet as an ethnic form of dance. So I think the issue sort of underlying a lot of why the Nutcracker is overrated, let's just call it for what it is that it's considered like the end all and be all. Like it's considered like ballet is the dance. Like I don't think that that's necessarily the best way to approach the genre, Nutcracker and otherwise, because it's actually a very specific sort of cultural dance in a way, you know, like it belongs to a specific culture. And so that brings me to my second reason, is that I feel like it's part of my heritage. And so like just the fact that my grandmother, my great grandmother, my mother, and then me grew up on it is quite special. And it has a lot of like specific cultural, it's almost like a time capsule, like a historical capsule, right? So I think there is a place for historical capsules as in theater, and it just needs to be positioned that way. Like we need to acknowledge that it's a product of its time and place, of its circumstances and its context, and that the intentions of the people back then might not align with our intentions for it now. But sort of to just say that, I think it's not said enough. So people assume that Nutcracker producers are trying to sort of create, or are sort of trying to set back like aesthetic progress in dance or something like that. I think that's an assumption that's often made, and for very fair reasons. But again, I don't think it has to be that way. So for those two reasons, let's keep going. Let's try to reinvent it, as Haley and Emma said. Let's just take risks with it a little more. So that's my stance.
Yeah. Absolutely. So I'm going to echo a lot of the points that have been said. So I'll wrap this up as quickly as I can. So to answer the first part, why has this become such the classic that it is? To be honest, the market's very thin. Like there's not a lot of material that is dance holiday specific. Like there's very little material in that arsenal of work that a dance studio, like a local dance studio or something that could bond that is directly specific to the holidays. The Nutcracker story in itself, set around Christmas time, it fits that time of year. So it's one of those things where like, because it's such a niche market of what other things you're going to put on at this time of year that's going to get everybody into a dance recital besides like just doing regular dances. Like there's something special about that because it's in such a niche group. Like the only other thing I could think of that is as iconic as the Nutcracker is the Holiday Rockettes in New York, that their holiday show they do every year. That's the only other big dance holiday spectacular thing I could think of that is almost up at that same level as a Nutcracker. So I think because it's
both have to do with money.
Exactly. So that's the thing there where it's like that, where it's like it's a very niche group of material that you can choose from that's going to be holiday specific. So I think that's why the Nutcracker has become what it is. Now that being said, I do think it's become a little bit of a stale staple where we haven't seen a leap in evolution in ways to adapt it. And I think there is opportunities for adaptations in ways you can fix the story up. Like I would love to see more focus put on the plot and clarifying the plot and exploring these characters. Because that's what dance is. Like people forget that. I mean, there's the mantra in theater that when you can't speak anymore, you sing. And when you can't sing, you dance to express your emotions and the story that's being told. And when you can do that with this piece, when you're exploring the internal struggles of a character like Clara, who is growing up and is having these experiences, you can get into a lot of great bit of dance. Like I'm sure all of us have seen movement pieces that have really explored something through physicality that is really special and can tell a really unique story. So I think there's something in that you can really get into. And even with like the Rat King, Like, there's so much more movement stuff you can do than just giving somebody a big fake rat head to wear on stage. Like, there's so much more. I mean, I hate to bring up Cats again, but that's something that Cats, as a musical, did really well. Was that the physicality that went into that stage work of having these actors in leotards becoming cats, and then putting on a big shoe and becoming a dog, and doing all these other things. Like, that's what made that piece of work so spectacular, was that physicality and that exploration you could do. Now, that being said, Cats doesn't give a lot of dramaturgical exploration. It's a movement piece. Yes.
Can I say a fun story? I know the woman
really?
who taught cat school at Cats.
Awesome.
Yeah, I did a residency
At
with
school.
her. She's like, yeah, I taught cat school. I taught them how to be like a cat. I hate cats.
Let's just talk about the fact that it's called cat school.
She was like, they asked me if I would teach cat school, and I said,
I remember
dead.
doing the workshop with one of the original Toronto Cats performers back in my dance day, where we did like an 8-hour workshop day of learning the opening number. And it's physically exhausting to do that type of dance, I have to say. The amount of physical attention to detail with the way your hands are and the way your legs move. Like, people don't fully appreciate the amount of work those dancers put into that physicality. But that all being said, like, we did. It was a good tangent.
we got
That
off
being
topic.
said, though, it was going to happen at some point.
It was bound to happen.
Sometimes it's Fiddler on the Roof, sometimes it's Cats. It's a thing. But all that being said, like, ballet is a beautiful technique, and it's the roots of dance. It's like learning Shakespeare. To understand your craft, you got to know the roots, and it's part of that thing. So learning ballet is key, but I think there's a lot you can do. Like, contemporary dance has definitely you can see the tie back to ballet. There is definitely a linear line you can see in the history of movement there. So I think
But nowadays we are trying to push
Perfect.
away against that mentality in all the schools, centering ballet as like because contemporary comes from modern, which came like out of elements of ballet, but also created their entire other techniques that actually don't need ballet anymore. And so it's really becoming a nicer conversation to have, that all these schools that center ballet as the fundamental thing that we all have to train in is now being questioned.
That's exactly
like, what is this like colonial nonsense that we've been taught? Because like we actually don't.
Yes, exactly.
But it's
that's exactly
of
it.
its
Like,
own.
you don't have to be so rigid in like doing perfect ballet for the Nutcracker. I would love, like, I'm not sure how much I would enjoy it, but I would love somebody to try doing like a hip hop Nutcracker. Why not? Shake it up.
I was reminded of, I think it was in the 90s. I don't know if any of you have seen, sorry to just go off topic really quickly. I think it was Mark Morris did something called the Hard Nut. I was a kid when I saw it, and I remember being like, "Whoa, this is weird," but I think I like it. What's happening? And it scared me a little for my age, but it was trying to do something else with the Nutcracker, and like we need more of that. And that was like one thing that I saw way back then. And I was like, where has been this?
I think it's
pushing
like a jazz Nutcracker, right? Like in this based in like 60s attire and with some drag.
Oh, that's cool.
I think.
Yeah, he's jazz, modern. It was but then like where was that continuation?
Yeah.
I'm sure that's out there somewhere. I'm sure that's out there. We just need to find it, and we need to elevate it.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
Exactly. So I do think there is something in this material that you definitely can excavate and pick apart. I don't think this is as stale of a staple as it's become. I think it's become that because we've become complacent in what it is, and it's become this cash cow of a machine. But I do think there is something in there, and I hope that when we get back into the live theater world again, we will see some more updated and new stagings of the Nutcracker. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. So, there we go.
Amen.
Oh my goodness, we made it through, everybody.
Yay!
We've gone on the Nutcracker dream, and now we've come back out again at the end of it. There we go. Well done.
Yeah, how long has it been? What year is it? Is it 2021 yet?
Almost. We're only a few weeks away.
Please.
Yep.
Someone get me there.
Yeah. All right. So before we head out, though, why don't we all give our social plugs, so in case people do want to engage us in a bigger conversation, or if they just want to reach out to you, You're happy to give whatever social media plug you want. I mean, if your Facebook account is private and you don't want random strangers messaging you on Facebook, you don't have to offer that. If there's just a Twitter account you want people to follow, what be it. So, Anna, you can start. Where can people find and follow you if you would like that?
Sure, thank you for offering that opportunity. I'm actually only on Instagram. I have Facebook, but I don't really go on it. So my Instagram, if anybody wants to follow, is public. It's more of a personal page, but I post some artwork, like some paintings that I do, and some movement stuff, like rehearsal of acrobatic dance sometimes. And that is at Rocco Compost. So ROCOCOMPOST. Yeah, and then if anybody ever wants to read some of the performance reviews I've done for mostly National Ballet, actually, here in Toronto, they can be found at the Dance Current magazine, like online, on the website. Just look up my name, and the Blue Riband blog. So I think that's briband.com. So BRIBAND.com.
Awesome.
That's pretty much it.
Fantastic. Emma, where can people find you?
So same thing. I kind of keep my Facebook to my own life, but then Instagram at EKSK, or you can just go to my website emmacurson.ca. Curson is spelled like person, just
wonderful. Haley, where can people follow you in all your escapades besides watching you on things like Schitt's Creek?
So you can find me on my Instagram at Hayla, HAEL, and then 5 A's at the end, Hayla. Or you can visit my IMDb page, Haley Pace, IMDb, HAYLEY, or my website, haleypace.com.
Fantastic. You can follow me at all social media platforms at Mackenzie Horner. Just look for the ginger-haired profile picture. Very easy to find. You can follow my podcast, Before the Downbeat, at Before the Downbeat on all social media networks. As of today, Wednesday, we have actually just released our review of the new Netflix film, The Prom. So you can hear all about what we thought of all the performances. Do we like James Corden? Did we not? Find out. Tune in. So you can definitely tune in for that. We just released our holiday episode, which was all about A Christmas Carol, a musical, which was done by Al Macon and Lynn Ahrens. So great bit of discussion was had there. You can follow Cup of Hemlock at all social media platforms. And stay tuned for more fun material coming in January. We have a lot more duet reviews, and we are currently working on a special 9-part series. So stay tuned for that coming at you probably in February. That's all I'll say on that front. But other than that, everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, have a great and happy holidays. Thank you so much for being on this journey with us all through 2020. We look forward to bringing you more great content. And hopefully to have all you wonderful panelists coming back for more episodes come 2021. So until then, everybody, stay healthy, stay safe, and have a great evening.